I wanted to, throw this out to Don, who lost your father recently, and being a father that's coming up where, he won't be here and you won't be able to physically celebrate him in person.
Yeah.
How was that grieving process for you? And then how as a couple, Ernestine, how did you support him, console him in that moment? And then how is that process now? What does that look like now?
Man, that's a lot. Just want to figure out where to start. So, yeah, I mean, it was hard because my dad passed January 2023, so just a little over a year ago. And his birthday is also in May. So it was kind of back to back for me. So it was like he passed, May comes around, his birthday. It's like, and like it's all back to back. So it's like you're grieving the loss. And here's the thing. So my dad passed in January, to be specific, January 12th. And it was a military funeral because he was retired Air Force. But because the base schedule was so hectic, we had to wait to have his funeral till February 1st.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. So we didn't have his funeral until February 1st. So from the time he passes, I'm grieving up until the 1st. And now I feel a little bit better. Well, now we got to have the funeral. All right. So we're back in it.
Yeah. And we're back on that drive.
We're back on the drive back home. And the last time I drove home he was dying.
Yeah, we were trying to get to the hospital,
Right, from Tulsa.
We didn't know that he wasn't going to make it, so we're trying to get there. Yeah. And so then we're back on that road just a couple weeks later,
Right.
So it's like, oh.
And so February 1st, his funeral. You're like, okay, cool. A couple of months pass. You're like, okay. May comes, his birthday is May 23rd. And I'm like, okay. First birthday without my dad. Or, you know what I'm saying? Or his first birthday not being here. And then Father's Day is right behind it. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it was like kind of like a blow. Yeah. I learned a very valuable lesson in the points of grief because I have never grieved. I mean, the last time I grieved was our brother's death, but this one was very, very different because it was my dad. And by the time, I don't know, I guess I would say a couple of weeks into it, there were moments where I was good. And it's like when I was good, like emotionally good, I was like, okay, I'm good now.
Right.
Like grief is past, I'm good. And I find myself even now, a year and a half later, it hits you. Yeah. And I learned that grief is not here to kill me. Grief is not here to make me feel bad about a situation. Grief is actually a healing mechanism. Yeah. That's God gave us to help us get past that point. The issue is when we don't let grief go. When it's time for it to go, we hold on to it. Yeah. It's almost like unforgiveness. Yeah. It's like there's a process where you like, okay, you need to forgive, but then there's an opportunity for you to forgive. You're like, nah, I'm choosing not to forgive. Now it begins to rot, and it begins to turn you. It's the same thing with grief. Grief was given to me, or given to us, anyone who has experienced it, to help us to heal. Yeah. Once you heal, though, you have the responsibility to allow it to go back to where it came from, to release it. But some people don't want to let it go. Yeah. And everybody's situation is different, right? I'm not judging anyone who's still grieving. Like I'm still grieving, but grief looks different.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Now, if I was depressed in the house or recluse, my whole life and identity and character has changed because of a loss, like then there's something to be concerned about.
Yeah. I think the other thing that a lot of people do is they run from grief.
Yeah.
I remember after your father passed, like the next day I called our counselor back home and I was like, hey, do you have any openings to see my husband? He didn't even have a chance to really even cry yet. No. I was already on the phone like, hi, do you have any openings?
And I ain't gonna lie to y'all. I mean, she's given me a lot of gifts over the years. One of the best gifts she gave me was that. I didn't even know I needed to do that. Yeah, I wasn't even thinking about counseling. Yeah. And I just remember, matter of fact, my dad passed on a Wednesday. I want to say it was like
Friday.
It was like 2 days later. She's like, "Hey, you'll have an appointment with our counselor through."
Yeah, I was about to say
that's
for
awesome.
you, that's so real as a couple, like as a unit. How did you know that like yeah, I need to do this immediately? Like, what was it that you saw in him, or just being one and with him? Like, you knew, okay, he gonna need this.
I feel like everyone was trying to be strong, which that's fine. But I was just concerned that in that strength that there were things that were happening that maybe he needed help processing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'd rather be safe than sorry. Let me just just call up just to make sure. And so y'all had your virtual session.
And it was great.
Yeah, and I remember, and you can explain it better than I can, but I remember you talking about how she asked you to describe how it's been for you. And you said something about running from it or something.
Yeah.
Like, how did you describe it?
I don't remember how I described because I'm such an in the moment type of thinker.
I think it was something like you said it's as if you were running. And when you look back, you could see grief behind you, running behind you. Do you remember that?
I
Like
do
it was
remember
chasing
that.
you.
And I don't remember exactly what I said. And I remember it being really good.
Yeah.
But
I remember you told me that the counselor said, okay, I want you to picture yourself, you're running from it. I want you to close your eyes, picture it. And then she told you, okay, and now I want you to picture that you stopped running.
Right. And
Stop.
turned around.
And turn around and face grief.
Yeah.
And I don't know if she told you to hug grief or
She told me to embrace it. And it was in that moment that I realized grief wasn't trying to kill me.
Yeah.
It was trying to heal me. And as men, we grow up, like, we don't cry. Like, you're going to have to suck it up. I remember the first time I had an experience with someone getting upset about people we naturally want to, there's something in us that wants to make people feel better. And we don't consider the timing and nothing like that. So when you
don't know what to say.
You don't know what to say, so you resort to like, well, it's going to be all right. And like, don't cry. And I remember the first time I experienced that happening was when my brother died and my mom was crying. And, my mama is a black woman. And so, when she was crying, she was crying. And I remember people was telling her, it's okay, don't cry, Janice, you're going to have to calm down. And I remember she yelled, we're in the funeral home. And I remember she yelled, don't tell me to calm down. My son is dead. Don't tell me to stop. I'm going to cry.
Right. Yeah. It's natural.
And I remember thinking like, that's so real. Like,
So real.
Because we just naturally don't know what to tell people. So we tell them, don't do that because it makes us feel comfortable.
Uncomfortable, yeah.
You know what I mean? And we don't do it on purpose, but that's just our resort. We resort to that. It's like, oh, it's okay. Don't cry. It's okay. And then as men, again, we grow up learning that, oh, we don't cry.
Right.
Hey, yeah, it sucks, but you're going to have to suck it up.
Yeah.
And once I embraced that grief regarding my father, like, I just remember breaking. I had multiple moments of just outbursts of just tears and crying because it hurt.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing that I had to heal from was it was my first time watching someone that close to me die.
Yeah. It's different.
Like, he was on his bed and looking at him lifeless, but the machine's breathing for him, and to see him pass and the blood around his mouth and just seeing all that was just like, those images are coming to my mind. And I'm just like, man, I wish I could have did something different. And I think when I knew that I was good, even before the grief really came, was standing by my dad's bedside as he took his last breath. And the nurse said officially, okay, yeah, he's gone now. And I remember I grabbed his hand, held his hand, and I prayed for him. And I said, Father, I thank you for the life of Don Hopkins Sr. I said, I thank you, Father, that right now you are saying to him, well done, thou good and faithful servant. So I thank you, Lord God, that whatever it is that you sent him to the earth to do, it is done. That he accomplished everything, that there is no work left for him to do. And I said, and I pray that you receive him now. And I have it on tape, recording, just me just praying him, because my father prayed for me for years. There's times I remember calling my dad, what you doing, Dad? I'm just praying for my children. That was his thing. And even as a kid, praying for me. And I was like, this is the one opportunity I get to pray for my dad. And what better way to pray for my father than in the moment of his transition back home? That right there, that took me. That took me. And I recorded it on purpose because I wanted to remember. Like, not that I prayed for him. I wanted to remember that moment that in the darkest moment of my life, one of the darkest moments of my life, I still found a hope and a joy and a light, and had to muster courage to do something that I'm called to do in the earth, and that is to be a minister. Right? And I ministered in that moment because my dad's spirit was transitioning from here. The Bible says to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. And in that moment, it was like I wanted to be involved in that experience of him, you know what I'm saying? Being in God's presence. And so, but it wasn't until after that the grief started. Right? So.
And I want to ask this question too. I know, like you said, like you called a therapist for him. Like, what does that look like? Like, have you learned how Don grieves? Like, how did you find out, like, what's the best way you can support him in those moments? Like, what did that journey look like?
Really just because, day by day can be different. A person might need one thing on one day, but then the next day they might need something else. So just really asking him and just being there and just saying, okay, what do you need from me? And in moments where he said he didn't know, then I would just be there, just my presence, But whatever he said that he needed, doing that. Because oftentimes we give people what we think they need.
Right.
So I found it important to ask him, what is it that you're needing, And also offering things he didn't ask for. And then if he doesn't need that, then he just didn't need it. But not taking it personally. Because I know oftentimes when a person's grieving, they're not necessarily themselves. And we can take it personally and this and that. So just choosing not to take those things personal during that time.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that, taking things personal, because there was forgiveness that I had to walk through too. Because there were moments, and I feel like I can talk about this now. There were people in my life that I felt like I was really close to, that to this day, I never heard from them. And it's a year and a half later. And I'm talking about people who I've called brothers, the people who were supposed to be really invested in my life in some kind of capacity or really close to or whatever. That sometimes I remember thinking, man, it would be good to just hear from some people who are close to me. Sometimes that's helpful too. My wife is there, but there was just like people who I felt like I've built community with, or, whatever. It's like, or people who I've seen face to face and never acknowledge it. It just, I had to walk through a healing process even with that. So I'm grieving, but I'm also thinking like, dang, you don't really care about me. I'm struggling, struggling internally. I'm struggling. My father is gone. Like, I can't call him back.
Right.
I got new voicemails on my phone from my dad. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's gone. And in a moment where I needed community, some people who were supposed to be in this community didn't show up. Now, I'm not mad at them. I feel like in the moment I was, if I'm being honest, I was. I'm not mad at them now. I'm good. I'm past it. I've healed from that. And I realized I put expectations on people. Though I do feel that certain expectations come with the role.
Like if you really are a friend.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you are Novi's parents. You cannot go and tell Novi, well, why did you have an expectation of your parents that they would be good parents? Where'd you get that from? That would be dumb.
Right.
Like, my wife has an expectation that does not have to be communicated to me. I want you to be faithful to me.
Right.
She doesn't need to communicate that. That just comes with the role.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I just can't. No, because people say stuff like, well, why do you have that expectation? Did you communicate that expectation? Okay, some stuff doesn't require me to communicate.
I think that people get really uncomfortable whenever it comes to loss and stuff like that, and they don't know what to say. And some people freeze up and just don't say anything.
Yeah.
Which, say something, a text or something. Like something.
Yeah.
Sorry for your loss.
Yeah. And I know some people get angry at people saying sorry for your loss.
And people don't like that, yeah.
Some people get angry whenever you say, I understand how you're feeling. Yeah. I've had someone blow up on me before because I was like, yeah, I understand. And she's like, no, you don't. Like, she's screaming. And to this day, we don't talk to this day. And this was years ago.
Oh, wow.
So I know different people want different things, but just still show up.
Yeah.
Still show up in the best way that you can. I think if you just don't try to not make a mistake, You know what I mean?
Well, I walked for a long time of trying not to make mistakes after that person blew up on me. Then I was like the real timid person when someone lost someone. Like, I don't know. If I say this, they might feel this. Or what if they don't like this?
Yeah.
God was just like, hey.
Like, it's a real thing.
Yeah.
People like, it's a real thing. People are uncomfortable and you don't know what to say. And I found myself sometimes where like, I don't know what to say. But I could not allow myself to not say anything.
Right.
So I would at least send a text like, hey, I know right now this is a private time for you. I just want you to know I'm thinking about you and that in any way that is possible, I'm here for you.
Yeah, if there's anything I can do, let me know.
Right.
You know? But I remember, and some of these people were, this is the crazy part. Some of these people were people who I was there for them when their dad died.
Maybe it was triggering for them.
Who knows?
Yeah.
I don't know. Now, again, I'm not mad.
Yeah.
I'm good, but I'm going to talk about it because it happened and somebody else is going to experience this at some point. And so, but I just remember no one not no one, I'm sorry, that's not the right word. Not no one acknowledged it, but people who I expected to acknowledge didn't even acknowledge. And to this day has never said, dang, bro, that sucks. I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah.
And I was just like, dang. So that honestly, that was a part of the grieving process for me also. So I'm not just grieving my dad's loss. I'm also grieving some issues that my brother had with my dad that they didn't get a chance to reconcile. And so that hurt my brother. And so I'm grieving that. I'm grieving trying to make sure everybody else is good. My sons who were close to my dad, my kids, just trying to make sure they're good. And so I'm making sure everybody else is good. I'm making sure my sister's good. I'm making sure everybody is good.
Yeah.
And I wait till the last minute to focus on myself. But when that moment hits, it just... Meet me at the altar.